Awesome, thanks. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
I use this to quiet me down a little bit, so that makes it more palatable, so I'm not as loud as normal.
Does that work?
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having us out here today. Obviously, y'all probably pretty familiar with me and my brother.
Of course, I'm Matt, my brother's Tim.
Yep, and we love Japanese maples. We love plants that provide a lot of color. And that's sort of what we're going to be talking about today, with some, obviously, very Japanese maple centric talk with lots of other plants added in as well.
So if you come see us a lot, don't worry. We've got a different presentation than open house. We've got a different presentation than you're doing 5 or 6 more talks in North Carolina this year. So don't worry, you got something original and new. We didn't give you a repeat performance here. You get something different.
One of the things we're definitely talking about today is the color explosion. This is actually my parents' yard. Many of y'all may have been there. I know the conference study was just there. Some people have been here for our open house. And just look at the yard. You see reds, greens, yellow. Yellow makes all of it tie together and pop for sure.
So, you've probably seen this picture. You're familiar with our place. Color explosions, where we get those are from combinations and contrast and using trees and other plants in the garden that pair with that and really bring those colors out. We love Japanese maples, but I love the color and the flash of it as well. One of my favorite gardens is Kabuto Gardens because it combines that Japanese style gardening with the flash of American plants, so you get like the really cool, the explosive, eye-catching kind of stuff. And that's a little bit of what we'll kind of talk about here today too.
And that's what we tried to tie in at my parents' home. You'll see this is an Acer Palmatum dissectum Anabashidari up here, that weeping red cascading lace leaf, and we paired it with that golden sedum.
One of the most basic color combinations for pairing, but it really brings the eye to it. I mean, accentuating 2 of your most common things. I mean, these are things everybody has in their garden, but putting them together, it really makes that pop, especially in early spring when they play off each other.
And while we're talking about color explosion, this may be a Japanese maple paired with one of the more simple plants. We're going to be talking about pairing lots of other Japanese maples with each other to really provide that color explosion as well, and other neat rare plants that really provide a lot of color in the garden.
So if you follow us on Facebook, you're probably familiar with our 10 at 10 we've been doing. We've been listing 10 new trees every Tuesday at 10, which has been kind of our lazy man's way of not putting 500 new trees on the website all at once. We're like, do you want to write all those descriptions at once? No. I'd like to say we're like really smart marketing people, but the truth is we're like, man, that's a lot. Man, what if we just did 10 a week? That'd make more sense, wouldn't it? And we've had a huge response. It's been really popular, but we list 10 new trees on Mr. Maple every Tuesday at 10. Some of our most popular releases, Hot Blonde here, beautiful tree. This is a tree, I got extra credit. I named this tree after my wife, so don't be offended by the name. There's a beautiful woman that goes along with it that loves me very much, and it can mean anybody you need.
Yeah, and this was found as a chance seedling in Chapel Hill off an Acer Oliveranum. The only other yellow that I know of in that garden is actually a Shirasawanum aureum. So it may actually be an Oliveranum X Shirasawanum, but
we do a lot of selecting in Acer Oliveranum. We love the species because it's essentially, it looks just like a Japanese maple. This is a Chinese maple, so it's in section palmata. It's a closely related cousin to the Japanese maple, and for most people, they're going to look at that and go, oh, looks like a Japanese maple to me. But the Acer Oliveranum is a little bit more heat tolerant, so we can push zones a little bit further with this. So by making newer selections in some of these other species, this grafts onto the same understock that we graft all of our Japanese maples on. It's actually, after we fell in love with this tree, it's probably the closest we've ever come to patenting a tree. We've never patented a Japanese maple, but we really thought about this one for a long time because it's super durable, its spring color is amazing, and the fall color was one of the best we've ever seen too.
And it's a very good grower. And so it's not something that sits around. It makes a nice tree very quickly, especially in the nursery setting. This is the summer flushes on it in the nursery. And you notice the sort of orangish new growth, the red border, kind of reminiscent of Shirasawanum aureum. But this tree is very durable and a strong grower for sure. Again, there's some more of that orange new growth.
So intensely bright yellow early spring, this tree should be right around 15 feet in that 10-year kind of period. We try to list, we'll talk a lot about different heights too. And I always tell us at each of our presentations, but we always try to see a time frame for heights. You'll actually see a picture in here. You might have seen this picture in some other presentations, but it's the best picture I'm ever going to take in my life. We have a picture of a 600-year-old Japanese maple in Japan. And one of the reasons we always give a time frame, because people say, what's the max size this is going to get? And we always try to emphasize that they're going to outlive us all. Like, what was maturity on that 600-year-old tree? Like 200 years old? I don't know what maturity was for this tree, but it certainly continued to grow with age. So we try to go with the most honest answer we can, which is in a 15-year period, this is kind of what you should expect on the size.
Yeah, and to touch on the naming of this again, the original name we put on this was actually Golden Ticket. And we were informed by...
Which we didn't like as much.
We didn't like as much. We were informed by Tom Rainey that he had a trademark on a plant called Golden Ticket. And we said, oh, okay, come up with another name. And then Matt decided to name it after his wife. So that was
extra credit there quickly. So this was actually the best fall color I've ever seen on a maple in our greenhouses too. One of the reasons we really thought about patenting this one for a while, I just don't like patenting plants because we do so many plants that for us, a lot for us is 1,000 of something. We don't plan on doing 50,000 of something. But awesome colors. This color actually held on. You see the other trees around it are out of leaf. This picture was taken in probably early December. I had amazing fall color this bright from October all the way through November, late into December for us.
Mid-October to mid-December. I mean, it was it was striking. Everyone that came into the nursery, they would say, I want that plant.
And we only had a few. We weren't
we weren't letting go of our 3-gallon crop at that moment because we needed to graft off of those and our other stock plants we've been evaluating. We've been watching this tree for
about 7 years now.
7 to 8 years.
What we try to do too when evaluating, we'll talk about this too, but we introduce some plants. We always try to evaluate anything for at least 6 to 7 years, get it in different conditions. We'll send it to New Jersey, we'll send it to Texas, we'll send it to Oregon, and then we'll take notes on what it's doing in every environment, and then we'll say, what's the 5 closest things to this? And with something like Olivieranum, that's easy because there's no selections in Olivieranum yet. But with most Japanese maples, we say, what's the 5 closest things to this? And then you have to answer, is it better than or different than that in a good way before you want to put it out there. And that's kind of our evaluation process for things like that.
With 1,000 cultivars too, we're very good at evaluating and saying, hey, this is close to this, hey, this is close to this. This doesn't need to be introduced because it's just like this. The last thing we need is another tree that looks just like another one out there with a different name. And so we're very picky and particular about that. And the trees we often release through us, we call the Area 51 collection. And y'all may have heard of that. We say their plants are out of this world. But now you want to talk about the reason.
The truth of why that came about is we would both be at presentations, 10 years ago, and we're still a tiny nursery, but when we were smaller than we are now, we'd be on the road and Dad would sell the one we had, and it was the only one, and it was the first hot one, and we were looking for it, and Dad said, hey, somebody came by and bought a tree today, and we're like, oh no, and then we just rush out to find out what's missing. And he was super proud he made a sale, and we'd be like, Dad, that was only one of that. So quickly, it kind of became a joke with a lot of our customers. They're like, I want that Area 51 back there where you're hiding all the good stuff, because it was the locked off area where nobody comes in or out of this greenhouse. But that's why we call it the Area 51 plants.
But as you can see, hot blonde goes from a really dramatic color, changes from that bright, bright yellow to that bright orange red.
And believe it or not, these are both just cell phone pictures, non-enhanced too, so intense colors. The fall color, I was like, no one's going to believe me. I've got several with just my pale hand in the photos, so people are like, yep, that looks like that. Looks like it's not changed colors any.
Yeah, and we've got a few of them over here too. We brought, I say, just for the...
It was one of our first 10 at 10 we did, and it's actually been our most popular tree of the year. Mm-hmm. So we have been out of it on our website for a little bit, but really cool habit to it.
So it's really about color contrast when you're talking about color explosion. Because if you had all yellows out there, you wouldn't notice it. If you had all reds out there, all greens, you wouldn't notice it. But it's about pairing those different colors. And that can be spring colors, that can be fall colors. And when you pair them and then it hits, it's that color explosion that's really going to look really good in the landscape.
So you got to think about the colors for these. When we lay out a garden, especially we garden very maple centric, as you can guess. If you've seen my mother's garden, that first picture, if you've been there in person, what we try to do is we plan the spring colors to be contrasting, but we also plan the fall colors to be contrasting with the things that are going to be directly beside something. So we don't want 2 golden yellows or 2 bright reds or 2 bright oranges, right in the same neighborhood. We want that wow factor color where each thing is catching the eye and just really throwing you, in each season too.
So here we've got Acer Palmated Sister Ghost over here. You'll notice the white on green reticulation makes an 8 to 10 foot tree. Over here we have Amber Ghost that can have a lot more amber hues to it.
Amber Ghost will almost put on like an orangish bright amber this time of the year too, so the new growth is even more like orangish color with that. And so these are very popular trees that Town Buckles introduced the Ghost series, which is, it changed the nomenclature. It was so popular for this. Normally people refer to this as the reticulatum style, and a lot of people still do. In fact, we still do. But for the most part, when people ask for this style tree, they don't say, I'm looking for a reticulated tree or something from the reticulatum kind of section. They say, I'm looking for one of those maples that's like Ghost series or like Ghost maple, and we know exactly what they're looking for. It's this etching where each leaf has this divided kind of etching throughout each leaf.
And Talon's been a really good friend to us. He sends us IPPS proceedings, rare transcripts on maples from Japan, handwritten books that are in Japanese with drawings of each of the of Japanese maples in fall colors. And he also lets us use some of those photos like you see here. But the next two are some of our photos. And same trees. Sister Ghost, yellow, bright orange.
And the amber goes here, so you can see that contrasting pop, not only in the spring color, but also in the fall color. So these are great pairings you can put near each other, because through each part of the season, they're going to look very dramatically different. One other fun little quick tidbit about Talon, we were presenting at SNA a couple years ago, and we always bug Talon about what's new and neat, because he introduces a lot of cool trees. We feel really cool now that he's selling a lot of our introductions, which is some fun validation for, it's fun to see that out there. But one of the fun things when we were presenting at SNA, and Don Shadow said, hey, Matt and Tim, we come and do this presentation on maples, and it's a quick presentation. There's maybe 200 people in the room, and so you do your presentation. And Don said, Talon couldn't make it, guys. That was great. I think Bree was in between us. He said, why don't y'all do Talon's as well, if you don't mind? So we got to do Talon's presentation, pop quiz style. So luckily, most people didn't, no one knew, but we got to do his entire presentation like this. And it's a good thing we know a lot of his introductions, because it was like this. Oh, well, this is Amber Ghost, and this would be Sister Ghost up here. And, of course, we knew about this tree, so it worked out well, but it was all impromptu pop quiz style. So that was our introduction. That was our introduction to some of these as well.
So you can also take this to the containers. Obviously, when you're going to containers, you want to think about what's going to contrast, what's going to stay small in those containers. Obviously, with containers too, you want to make sure they've got good drainage. Number one mistake with containers with Japanese maples is poor drainage. Hole gets clogged up, starts filling up with water, you don't notice it, you got a little pond action going in there, and those roots start rotting. And so the best thing to do is keep good drainage, raise it up a little bit off the ground with some pot feed or some paint stirs or something broken up underneath there so people don't see it.
So two super popular trees here. I mean, two are most talked about. Certainly lace leaves work great for container gardening as well. But a lot of people say, like, what's a great miniature red or a great miniature green? This is Makawi Etsubusa here on the left, which is probably, it's not common, but if we ask maple experts, the question we always ask, which me and Tim always bug everybody, we say, what's your favorite Japanese maple? Every time we talk to somebody who's a maple connoisseur, it's our most common answer is Makawi Etsubusa. So it's certainly very, very popular for this tight shingled layering.
It was actually the 2015 Maple of the Year at the North American Maple Society, which is the very first Maple of the Year.
That won unanimously the first year pretty quick.
Yeah.
And of course here on the other side we have Rhode Island Red, beautiful, compact, deep burgundy. Rhode Island Red is named after the Rhode Island Red chicken, which is a small red chicken as well. So
yeah, it was found at Rhode Island Nursery in Rhode Island, but it's a dwarf bloodgood that is short and multi-stemmed, more lateral branching, not necessarily weeping, but as you can see there, the branches just get denser and denser, which is
very, very full and compact. Yeah. Typical for us for even in a 15-year period, it's no more than 5 to 6 feet. It does tend to be almost equally as wide. It's a very dense habit to it. Makawi Etsubusa is another tree. While we give a time frame, if you've toured our display garden, you'll see one of the biggest Makawi Etsubusas. It's close to 12 feet tall. It's also around 40 years old though. So, but typical for that one in that kind of time frame is more like Makawi Etsubusa is more like 4 to 5 feet as well in 15 years.
So we'll talk about Dragon Master, which y'all have seen. Some of y'all may have seen at the nursery, but this one is actually one of Talon's. While Dragon Master is one of our weeping yellows, this is Talon's new introduction of Golden Falls. The difference between the two is this one is more like a summer gold weeping type, and the Dragon Master I would compare to like an orange dream. So this one's going to be a more yellow throughout the season, and then goes to a red in the fall.
Dragon Master actually leaves out with a lot more pink blushing all over it too. And so they're very interesting. They're both of their lineages obviously come from Raulson, which is the one here on the right, which you're probably familiar with. Raulson is a unique plant, very, very pendulous, gets about as tall as you stake it. So I've seen, there's one at Sarah P. Duke that's staked up to, last time I looked, it was probably around 12 feet tall. It would never get that big without staking it and getting some height to it right away.
And Golden Falls is a way to really give that color contrast with that bright yellow and add that in the landscape. I always say that yellow is the most underutilized color in the garden. You always see your greens, people get excited with the reds, but when you put that yellow in there, that's what makes everything pop together. And it brings out your greens and makes them show off, and your reds at the same time.
Super popular tree for us, though. This has been one that just really contrasts well. Again, here's an example of that red popping off that green. These are Acer Palmatum Orangiola. I love this planting. It's just kind of like rolling mountains. And so it's one of our customers' homes, but it's just fascinating to me. I love how it was used as a one continuous tree there. But Orangiola is a neat plant that almost contrasts with itself, but you certainly can see the advantages of having that yellow in there to catch the eye.
And Orangiola is actually the 2017 Maple of the Year.
It's also run the Royal Horticultural Award of Merit too, so it's a really
1993.
Yeah, very popular plant wherever it's at, always.
And you've got a lovely one out here in full sun over here at the J.C. Raulson on the walkway that just shows off during the spring when you go through here, and you come back during the summer, and it's that sharp, that green with that orange-red new growth coming across it. I mean, it really is a showcase tree.
It's a maple that I like to think about. You know, we think about spring colors and fall colors, but Orangiola is probably my favorite lace leaf because of midsummer. Like normally when you go look at it midsummer, it's greener, older growth like you can see here, then like reddish new growth, almost like orange pink tips. And so its contrast with itself is quite intense.
And so,
again, non-edited photo here. People look at this one, they think like, man, you jacked the color up on this one, but no.
And the tree on the left, that is our Dragon Master. That is our weeping selection like Raulson. It leaves out orange and then goes to the yellow and goes to orangey red in the fall.
You probably heard Tim mention we kind of use our open house, which is every Memorial Day, as that's our fashion show runway for the new things. So anything we're working on developing or that's new and interesting, we always try to debut it first at open house. That's kind of our reward to people that come to visit on Memorial Day. This year was crazy. We had a lot of people that braved the rain, but we were praying and praying and praying because it said 90% rain, and we're like, oh gosh, let this rain miss us. How are we going to do? We actually had our busiest day ever in a torrential downpour, 90% rain all day. So I guess we were praying for the wrong things because we did great in sales, but it was incredible rain. But everybody that came there was really struck by this tree. It's probably one of our more neat introductions. It's very similar shape to the Raulson as well. This one keeps putting on more orangey, kind of pinkish new growth as well, so it kind of blushes, for the lack of a better term, kind of a pinkish and then orange in midsummer over top of the yellow.
There is a yellow Raulson type in Europe called Cascade Falls, and that is patented over in Europe, what they call PBR. But both of our introduction and Talon's introduction of the yellow weeping types, neither one of them are patented. Up here we have Acer Palmatum Amagashiguri. That is one of those plants you want to give a little protection from the hot afternoon sun. I'd probably do that same with some of these yellow Raulson types, simply because they're yellow, they're new. We don't know exactly their sun tolerance in every location.
This one pops in every season though. It's got that reticulated etching again. A really fun one from Japan. This one typically is one of the smaller ones for that style of irrigation too. So Amagashiguri is only normally in about 6, maybe even 7 feet in 15 years, so it's not a gigantic plant either. It stays a little bit smaller than most, but awesome color pattern too. It's almost a little bit more vibrant metallic-y purple too than many.
So here we've got Acer Palmatum Geisha Gone Wild. Geisha Gone Wild is actually a reoccurring sport that happens on a cultivar called Geisha. It's just solid pink.
If you've seen Shiraz is a very, very popular tree. Almost the exact same thing. They actually have different origins. And that's one of the reasons why we don't like patent maples too, is because you'll have two people come up with a very similar plant and,
half a world apart.
Half a world apart. Geisha Gone Wild comes from Oregon, where Shiraz originated in New Zealand. Both are the same sport, essentially, off of Geisha. But they're different plants, so they're different origins. They didn't come from the exact same place. Nobody ripped anybody off. But essentially, they're identical plants.
And beside it is Summer Gold. Summer Gold was actually found as a chance seedling at Isley Nursery that they believe to be a cross between Acer Solemnum Aureum and Orange Dream. And they also, as a sister seedling from that same batch of seedlings, found Solemnum Jordan. And so Solemnum Jordan is listed as Solemnum because it looks a little more full moon-like. That's
from Jubilee Nursery.
From Jubilee Nursery. What did I say?
Isley.
Oh, I'm sorry. But Summer Gold is a spectacular introduction. Probably one of the more heat-tolerant yellows once it gets established, and goes to a red in the fall.
This and Hot Blonde are two of the only yellows you can put in a good amount of sun. To Michael Steinhardt as well, we'll talk about that one, but very few, most of your yellows, I mean, Aureum, forget about it, don't put that in full sun ever. Most of your yellows, as a rule of thumb, are going to need a little bit of late day shade for protection, so that 3 o'clock on sun you got to protect them from. This one's one of the exceptions though. I mean, Hot Blonde and Summer Gold can handle that 3 o'clock on sun.
And Michael Steinhardt. Yeah.
And Michael Steinhardt too.
You want to talk about?
Go ahead. Jordan's another one, maybe even more intense. When me and my wife were dating, she was like, didn't know anything about maples, and she would come by my parents' yard and she'd say, "How's my neon tree doing?" Because it's just neon yellow. So for whatever reason, everybody that didn't even into horticulture always reacted to this plant in our garden because it's intense. Now since we've been married, I actually moved that tree into our yard because she liked it so much.
Jordan's one of those plants that as a young age, the leaf will be a little bit narrower, but as it ages, it gets more full, like Acer Solemnum Aureum, you'll notice. It can take a little more sun, and it's a little less finicky than Acer Solemnum Aureum in the south as well.
It still does a little better with late day shade on that one.
Yeah,
overall.
give it some late day shade. And Purple Ghost. These are some of our favorite trees to plant beside each other because you get yellow and purple, and then in the fall, you get like a red and a fuchsia red, with the fuchsia red being the Purple Ghost. So the color contrast just keeps on coming between those two and keeps showing out throughout the season. And while this one here goes more and more yellow during the season, this one may go to more of a maroon during the midsummer, but still providing great color contrast beside each other year round.
Love this plant. This is our plant that just looks good in every season too. Like we always go out and it's not that we forget about this plant, but we think it's awesome in the spring. It's like this kind of color, but we always go out in the greenhouses in like late summer and we're just like, holy cow, why are we not doing a million of these? Because the late summer color is really intense too, and so it always shows out and stands out even in really hot climates. This is Acer Maple, introduction by our friend Dick Vandermatt in Holland.
Yeah, and this for me, it's one of those plants that is spectacular in the spring. Bright orange new growth, like this orange-red new growth you see here. With sort of that sort of malting look with the chartreuse center. It does fade, it fades to a green. But the new growth during the summer is a bright orange-red again. And so during the summer, it's one of those plants that everyone who comes in the garden and comes into the nursery, they're like, I want that tree because it looks amazing. It looks like a bouquet of flowers.
Lovely color, named after one of our friend's daughters, and really cool overall plant.
So many of y'all probably have grown ukigumo in your garden and landscape, also known as floating clouds. It's one of those trees in the south that maybe once out of every 3 years really shows off.
We should start that out with, many of you have probably been disappointed with ukigumo in your garden.
And the reason you're disappointed is because you're looking for the white. It's a beautiful tree. It has a great fall color, but you were looking for the white. And so you got it thinking, hey, this is going to be white. In the south, it doesn't.
My friend Augustin, he's the chairman of the International Maple Society, and he lives in Toulouse in the south of France there. And we were discussing ukigumo, and I said I like the tree, but I always let people know up front, like it's not bright white every season for us. It's very rarely white. Has a great orange fall color, but don't expect it to be this color every season. A Hanachirosato will be for us. And so Augustin said, oh, mine's always white. Mine's never faded. Every season I've ever had it, it's been bright white on ukigumo. Well, I went and visited him in the south of France, and wouldn't you know it, that was the 1 year, I guess. It was as green as could be, so it didn't have any of the white to it. But we love Hanachirosato. It's a Trident Maple. It's got smaller leaves. Very popular for bonsai, the Trident Maples, because of their durability. But the color on that one is very consistently bright white. For any of the bright whites, what you want in the spring is a slow spring too. So, not leafing them out in high heat climates will work, where it just kind of slowly changes. You'll get more intense colors.
So one thing about Hanachirosato is it's white in the spring. During the summer, it goes green. And so you really get the most consistent colors when the tree gets right around 3 to 4 feet and is outside, not in a cold frame or not in protected up near your house, it's best for the plant to be outside in the ground where it experiences those cold temperatures that break up the color pigments in the leaves.
Typically for us, we get this kind of color. Gosh, we've got one in the ground now that's probably close to 10 to 12 feet tall, very mature one. And we get this kind of color on it for about a month in early spring. Now, like Tim was saying, late summer, it certainly will green up, but it's always very consistent on the color.
If you're looking for a white maple, this is a white Trident Maple, Acer Rubicons, that can handle a lot more sun than a lot of the other trees. And the reason it handles so much sun is because it's white in the spring when it's soft, and then as the summer goes in, it turns more green.
Now, if you can give this one late day shade, it certainly can take the sun, but if you have an opportunity to give this one late day shade, like that 3 o'clock on protection, you will carry that bright white color later into the season as well.
And so here we've got a good pairing of the Hanachirosato with Acer palmatum Noel. Noel was actually a sport that was found on Shindasojo. Some of you may be familiar with that, at least as a cherry red in the spring. Well, this one is a variegated sport that was found at John O'Brien's nursery in Connecticut. At O'Brien Nursery is mainly a hosta nursery.
Imagine if you took kind of everything you liked about Arita no Nishiki or Asahi Zuru and then combined it with Shindasojo. So 2 really colorful plants. It has those pink kind of swirling misshapen leaves. Wherever the variegation hits, it kind of swirls. So it's kind of the Arita no Nishiki version of Shindasojo.
And the knock on Shindasojo is it's electric in the spring, and it goes green during the summer, and then it's electric during the fall with just that bright fire engine red again. Well, during the summer when it's supposedly green, this one has variegation with the green. So you get some added interest even during the summer.
Another tree that really pops and has a ton of color and just contrasts with itself and extremely well. But when you pair this with something like that bright white, I mean, the 2 are just electric together.
And this tree was named by the late Dennis Dodge, who was also a good friend of ours.
Dennis was one of these guys, he never left his house, but he knew where every plant was in the world. And so he would go and sit in his basement with him for hours looking at things on the internet. And every time I wanted to buy something from him, he wouldn't sell it to me. So I just took him 10 weird plants, and then I left with like a treasure chest of 10 weird plants, but I never bought a tree for the man in his life. And it was really fun. And
we went and sat down with him in his office, and he pulls up on his computer photos of
evaluations
of ours that we hadn't released or sent out to anybody that I could think of. So it's like, what are you doing here? You're a computer hacker?
You have pictures of this.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It'd be like in Europe when you'd email him and be like, what garden is this one plant in? And he would know, never been there, but you go here and you go to the left, and here's that plant you're looking for.
So Michael Steinhardt, this is the golden Trident Maple. It's yellow, gets more and more yellow throughout the season. It's electric, give it some sunlight, that gets more and more yellow with the sunlight.
Again, one of our most interesting of the Trident Maples. Tridents are super popular for bonsai, but this one keeps the yellow the strongest, and it has amazing fall colors too. This one normally has more kind of orangey new growth to it throughout the season too, so like late summer, it's not uncommon for it to be a little bit more like orange yellow on top of that. Yeah. Another yellow that can actually handle a little bit of sun too.
The original one, this was an introduction by Don Shadow. The original one is right around 15 feet, and it's about 15 feet after about 15 years. So it's definitely got some a mid-sized grower. It's not as large as some of the other Trident Maples. I'm sure the yellow keeps back some of that, but it is a strong grower for us, for sure.
So we're going to do a few of the really neat, cool things. These are some of our 10 at 10 items you may have been seeing pop off. A lot of these are spring colors too. Celebration. Talon says this may be the best tree he's ever introduced, and I'd be hard pressed to tell him he was wrong about that. Lovely color patterns, another of that reticulated type. Talon decided to quit calling anything Ghost Series, so I joke with some of my customers that collect the entire Ghost Series, if you want this one you can call it Celebration Ghost because it's in that same lineage, but it's just Celebration.
Yeah, this one was found, I believe, as a seedling from Amber Ghost, and it just has some electric colors. It's really more of that pink color, and it's that pink color in the spring. It fades down to like a almost lime green on white reticulated variegation, and then the new growth there in the summer is pink to purple again.
So it contrasts itself really well throughout each season. And again, with some late day shade, you'll pull these colors stronger later in the season. You'll keep the bright pinks with late day shade. much more intensely late in the season. But just really fun color pattern.
So this is another Trident Maple. We're big fans of the Trident Maples. There's probably, I think there's only about 30 cultivars of Trident Maples like listed in cultivation. And I think we've got probably 15 or 20 of them.
At least, if not more.
Yeah. And this is a reticulated type that in the spring is almost like that Hanachirosato, but it's a yellow Hanachirosato. So this is one called Golden Pharaoh.
So it keeps that, it has that kind of etching throughout each leaf. It doesn't hold that color late into the season either. It will green up, especially in heavy sun, it will get more green. But it almost keeps the spring color more intense as a result of that. The spring color is always very, very striking yellow like this. And it's just really neat because it has that, one of the few Tridents that has that etching throughout every single leaf. So it kind of looks like a Ghost series type thing.
And so this is Acer Rubicons. It's a snake-bark maple called Red Flamingo. And it was found as a sport off of silver cardinal. And so people all the time argue of which hybrid species of snakebark this is. Because
Snakebarks are the most promiscuous plants in the garden. And so like I'd be hard pressed to ever tell you this is specifically from this seedling because my goodness, if you've got 5 snakebarks in your garden, they've probably all cross-pollinated a million times.
But this one is a beautiful pink reticulation. This is going a little bit towards fall color where that pink's starting to highlight up again during the fall. But pink then fades to the white, and then during the fall again it intensifies up to a pink on red.
You may be familiar with snakebarks, but the reason they have that term is because they actually have like reticulated bark to them too. So the bark kind of has that almost
striations.
That smooth, almost looks like snake skin. It's like almost like a smooth skin with like reticulations throughout each part of it. And so this one has pink bark too, which is pretty neat.
So it's one of our favorite snake barks, and definitely a pretty showy one at that.
I love when they have the samaras on them. The snake barks actually have string-like seeds that hang down. So the seeds that hang down come down these little clusters, and especially with some of the variegated ones, they're intensely pink and things like that on the seed. So it kind of almost makes it look, more intense too when they have some seed to them.
So we've been talking about reds and yellows and variegated, all this fun stuff. So I thought we'd talk about a green one. So we've got Acer Palmatum Emerald Isle. This is a broad spreading, more dwarf type. It's a newer introduction by Talon as well, with chartreuse green new growth over top of green. The fall color is a bright red. Great for pairings for greens that go with yellows or reds that go to yellows. But definitely a fun, newer dwarf Japanese maple with a broad spreading canopy.
Really has a nice, this is the new growth flush over there, but really nice. I mean, it does get more like emeraldy color too. So another really fun one, if you hadn't noticed, we like the variegated stuff. If you come to color explosion talk, I guess you like variegated plants as well. So this is another a fun variegated one. The Jubilee. The difference in this one is it flushes more like pink over top of this. So it kind of, for lack of a better term, we've started calling this like blushing, because you'll have the green older growth, but then it kind of blushes pink throughout it. So you get those accents throughout each part of the foliage.
And here's Jubilee in the fall color. You still get that reticulated variegation, which shows up amazing, but with some red coming in there. And so you get almost completely opposite from the spring to the fall.
Very similar to the other Ghost series trees. This is in that same lineage of Ghost series, so it's not a Ghost series plant, but it's similar in its heritage for sure. These can handle sun, but if you keep them in late day shade, you'll have more intensity. Like you'll carry that style bright white into the etching later into the season.
So the Batwing Maple. If you ever want to have some comedy, go back and look at some of our old YouTube videos when we were first starting out with YouTube. And you'll see me in a Spider-Man costume and Matt in a Batman outfit talking about
Batman for Halloween.
Acer picked up Usagumo, the Batwing Maple. But in the spring color is a bright coral color, and then it goes to the white. And the leaves can be about this big, and just that white reticulated variegation throughout the summer. Sometimes the new growth flushes can be a little more green, but as they mature out, they go to that bright white, which you see up here in the top right-hand corner. Just super amazing tree. It's one of my favorites. Really difficult to propagate. If you're wanting to propagate this, you got to graft it during the summer, because for us, winter grafting just doesn't add up for us for this one.
Really a cool plant. The Acer pictums are a little bit more heat tolerant. Gets a big rounded leaf to it too. These are all different spectrums there in early spring. Again, the bright white, like the one you see up here at the top, that's actually more like late summer kind of color to it. But fun thing, yeah, we dressed up like Spider-Man and Batman, and then we went to Black Mountain, and we were in the Black Mountain News the next day, and it said, Batman, Matt Nichols, Spider-Man, Tim Nichols. It's like, well, our covers are blown now. That was on the ad for the... Yeah.
How big does that one get?
They can actually get fairly big with age.
It takes time. Say in 15 years, you're looking at a tree that's going to be right around 8 to 10 foot.
I have seen one that was 15, 20 feet. Now, it was more like a 30-year-old plant to be that kind of age, that size. So.
And we've got one right now that's right around 10 years old, and it's right around 6 foot. And you know, it's got a nice canopy to it. It's gorgeous. It's on the lower side of my parents' yard, and it's one of my favorite plants for sure. And again, those whites, you add those into the garden because that's that other color that you really don't think about much, but they really add a lot to the landscape.
Dark Night. So you're probably familiar with Purple Ghost. Dark Night has even darker, more intense colors. Batman was Dark Knight, so of course we're big geeks. We had to get Dark Knight too. Couldn't let that one pass. But I guess Tim will get to dress up like Batman this year and talk about that one.
So Dark Knight was found as a chance seedling from Amber Ghost. It's an amazing selection. The reason I like it is because during the summer, when it's outside, it actually still holds those reticulated veins throughout the summer. Remember I talked about Purple Ghost will go to more of a maroon during the summer? And you often lose those reticulated variegation during the summer, but you get them in the spring. This one, you still see the veins of the leaf even throughout the summer.
Especially as it's established, you start to see more of that kind of etching even super late into the season. And more dark color to this one too.
And that sort of shows you some of the summer colors in the greenhouse. And our greenhouses do heat up quite a bit. If any of you are there for the conference side, you know that it warms up in June and July especially. I mean, it can be 115 degrees in our cold frames during the day. And you still see some reticulated variegation on those older growth, which is amazing. So this is one of my favorite species. This is Acer Calculator. Some people call it Acer Calculator, but Acer Calculator, it's in section palmata. It's closely related to the Japanese maples as your Japonicums and Shirosawans, but it's from China. And so this is actually a super rare Chinese maple. Has a really unusual tri-lobed leaf to it. Pink new growth, looks almost tropical over green.
The new growth is always exceptionally colorful. I mean, I've seen it be green, orange, pink. I mean, just the new growth is always really vibrant and it really contrasts with, you know, the older late summer color is typically more green, but the new growth flushes over it really intense. And
this is one of those trees that we took Tony's advice and planted something that people said wasn't going to grow for us. And it grew fantastic. We've had this in our landscape. It's right around 10, 12 feet. It's went through -9. So it's extremely cold hardy selection. And
it may be too geeky for you, but a lot of people were always grafting this one onto pseudoplatanus. And so very commonly in the trade, this isn't in America at all. In fact, we're the only people that offer this one in the US. But in Europe, most people were grafting this one onto Acer pseudoplatanus. And a lot of things will work on pseudoplatanus, but they don't love it. And so instead of doing that, we decided it was in section palmata. And so it's essentially another cousin of the Japanese maples, just like that Acer oliviernum. And so we grafted on the same understock we would put any of our Japanese maples on. And as a result, it's really thrived for us. It's made it a lot more hardy, a lot more durable, and a lot prettier, honestly, of a plant. We actually had the first recorded case of this seeding. And Maples for the World, D.M. Van Gelderen had listed that this tree had never been saw seed. And I guess because it wasn't on its own roots a lot, so most people were grafting it to an understock that maybe caused it not to. And so we've been putting this onto palmatum, and as a result, we've had some seeds. We actually donated a big one here for the Arboretum too. You have to check out if you like the plant. There's a nice size.
That little hyphen there, it shouldn't be there, but
awesome species. So we like the species. We're really into the species, especially if they contrast or do something different. So.
Yeah, this tree has some really good fall color too, bright oranges and reds. Typically a little later than a lot of the Japanese maples, but it's really been one of those unique species that's amazing, and I was really surprised that we could actually grow it and it would do so well for us. I mean, for years we kept it in a protected greenhouse. Then we said, let's plant it out. We planted it out, and just year after year we kept coming back and we're looking at it like, wow, we went through that winter. Wow, went through that winter. And it's opposite from what the books say, because they say, oh, this is going to be soft. no one had tried.
It looks tropical, but no one was trying it.
So this is another reticulated type. This is actually a newer one, another one by Talon, was newest introductions, called Nebula. Maybe we'll tell them.
Nebula is similar to the Jubilee. It'll have that bright white overgrowth, but this one kind of blushes purple. So especially if you put them side by side, you'll see the differences. The other one blushes really bright, it's like hot pink, and this one blushes more bright purple as they mature, especially. And Nebula is just a really fun one. It's one that the reticulation, it's almost like you just look deeper into it every time you look at it.
So this is another Trident Maple. This is one that gives you amazing spring yellow, and then it's green during the summer with oranges to reds in the fall. And sometimes, last year it went to like this electric, almost pink in the fall. Which is
one of the most intense yellows though, Bling Bling is like,
lemon lime.
It is highlighter yellow for the whole spring. I mean, typically for about a month we get this kind of color pattern here. Now we'll put on yellowish new growth over top of that. I mean, so the new growth will be bright yellow, but it does have greener older growth. It's one of the most intense yellows we do though, for sure.
So jet black. This is an upright Japanese maple. Going to probably be right around that 12 to 14 foot in height, but it holds that darker color, and it's going to be one of the darkest Japanese maples. There's Acer palmatum nigrum, and you put that beside this, and it's even darker.
This picture was actually taken about 3 weeks ago in the greenhouses, so you can see it holds that color exceptionally well late into the season, and it's just a darker style red than most of your other red types, for sure.
And this is in 55% white poly, which is something that doesn't hold their color well. And it's also in that 115 degree heat we talked about, which also doesn't hold their color well. Our Tamukiyamas are greenish red at the same time, and our jet black, that dark purple.
It's really a fun new plant for the garden, and just it's a different color than everything else, especially throughout the summer. Blonde Beauty, this is one we'll be offering. It'll probably be next spring before we offer this one. Another of Talon's introductions.
We sent him a hot blonde, he sent us a blonde beauty. Go figure.
I guess we were thinking similar things.
And this is a blonde beauty again. It's more of a yellow on the reticulation, so you get a lot of that yellowish green color to it. And as you see, it has a spreading habit to it, which will be a really nice addition to the landscape. But that one's a newer one that a little new to us. We still have to evaluate it a little bit.
Snow Cloud, if you're familiar with this one, it's an awesome plant. We've got 150 different types of ginkgos, and so everybody loves variegated ginkgos. There is a lot of instability to some of that variegation, though, in a lot of the variegated ones. I've never had Snow Cloud revert on us. I've probably produced around 1,000 of these from graft, and I've never had one that showed up that was all green. And so it really impresses me for a variegated ginkgo. It doesn't revert for us at all.
If you see a ginkgo in the nursery tray, it's kind of rare, called Frosty. It is the same thing. Barry Yinger actually brought it from Japan and then named it Frosty years ago, sold it through his nursery. And
we were building numbers on it. It was our top secret. We got it from Barry, and we were like, man, look at this. This is so cool. You know, he hadn't shared it with anybody else. And
then Snow Cloud hit the market.
Well, somebody else imported the exact same plant from Japan, but had distributed it more widely, so this name was more common. But we do know now that Snow Cloud and Frosty are the same plant.
But give this a little protection from the hot afternoon sun, 4 or 5 hours of sunlight. This is going to be white. I mean, as the name Snow Cloud says, or Frosty, either one, it's going to give you a lot of white color in the landscape. More upright tree, 6 to 8 foot in 10 years.
And it makes more of a small tree shape, so it's not something that's just super dense and fat, but it makes like a nice small tree.
And give your ginkgos lime, garden lime, and it's one of those things that really makes them grow and get established quicker. They like more alkaline soil, and we often have a lot more acidic soils in our areas.
Beautiful plant though, and it really shows out. Even late summer right now, they're quite striking. It's going to be on one of our new upcoming 10 at 10s, and gosh, there's probably 50 or 60 of them there in the greenhouse, and the whole section's just glowing. I mean, they kind of still have this kind of color to them right now. Maybe that last picture more than right now. This is more early spring.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of has like a yellowish hue to it early spring too.
So Pepe Starfish, this is one of our favorite newer Japanese maples. Not as quick growing as like an Emperor or Bloodgood. Probably going to be more in that 8 foot range in 10 years. And the leaf cups down like a starfish. It was a selection by Piet Vergelt. Many of y'all may have seen Pepe Minaret or seen this offer. Pepe, what it is it's a combination of his name, Piet, sometimes known as Pete, Vergelt, Pepe. And he puts his name right there in front of a lot of his introductions. And just neat introduction with that starfish shape to the leaf.
Same guy introduced American, that's his wife.
It's kind of funny, this plant world's so small, our friend Talon was over visiting him, and Piet asked him, he said, hey, what do you think I should name that? And he said, Starfish. And Talon actually put the name on Piet Brigelt's tree of Pepe Starfish.
I first saw this tree in Holland at Esfeld and was like, this is crazy, we've got to be growing this. I mean, Trumpenberg's popular, but it's a more intense, dwarfer form of that with, just each foliage just looks like a little starfish.
And the leaf cups more, basically the new growth will flush out a little bit flatter, but then the new growth returns that older growth as it ages with that cupped foliage. So this is one of my favorite ginkgos. Snow Cloud is your white. Beijing Gold in the spring, if you give it some sunlight, can be a yellow. And it'll be a yellow in the spring, and then the yellow starts fading as the green pushes the yellow out. And this year in the greenhouses, we didn't have it as much as we did last year. But really, our ones we had last year were all 3 gallons, so they're a little bit larger, which could give you a little more consistent color.
Bright yellow, though. Kind of has a glowy yellow hue to the whole plant in the early spring. This is an early spring picture.
And then during the summer, after it does go green, all the new growth during the summer has streaks of variegation in it.
So this one just kind of has these little exaggerated striping, almost like little tiger stripes throughout each leaf. And another ginkgo that we like because I've never seen it revert. So even every season is still, it might have some green foliage midsummer, it might not be always as intense, but I've never seen it lose its variegation.
And so for a ginkgo that gives you some color, this one definitely provides a lot of yellow color in the landscape, and in the fall as well. Ginkgos are just spectacular with their fall color. And Beijing Gold is actually a selection from China, and then we've got Snow Cloud, which is a selection from Japan, which is kind of neat.
Japanese Princess, very popular one. This is, Makawi Etsubusa we talked about earlier. Normally everybody's top of their list when we say what's your favorite Japanese maple. Well, Japanese Princess is kind of like the best offspring of that, if you will. So this is in that same lineage of Makawi Etsubusa. Still has that tight, dense layering to it. Kind of goes to more of a blonder, older growth with then bright pink new growth over top of that midsummer. With a little bit more sun in the early part of the season, the whole tree will be all this color pink. So with shade, you get more of that contrasting color too.
And so I'd probably give this tree some morning sun and afternoon shade for best peak colors. The more and more we move them around the garden, the more and more I'm starting to see that if you put it in full sun, you get amazing spring colors. During the summer, you don't get as much color, but if you give it some morning sun and afternoon shade, you get more colors throughout the season. So this is actually one of Talon's newest introductions. We actually got to introduce this one. He sent us a bunch of wood on it, and it's Acer Palmatum Wave Leaf. This was one of his rising stars. Basically, he has all of his seedlings he goes through. The ones that don't make the cut become rising stars. And he said, why didn't I choose that one? And then he looked in the thing and sort of sat at the side, and every single person who garden was coming through trying to tag his larger trees said, I want that tree, I want that tree. It's like
so went back and took it out of the sales area.
So he took it back to the sales area and sent us wood on it, and it's called Wave Leaf. It has more of a shinier leaf to the leaf than a purple ghost.
It's a little bit more glossy. It's hard to explain sometimes in a picture, but this one kind of has a shimmer to every leaf, so it kind of almost looks like it's wet.
And the leaves here around the sides are kind of wavy, and they curl a little bit, which really give this tree a really soft, glossy sheen that makes it stand out.
Of course, you probably know Sherman's Nordlicht. We've talked about this plant a lot, but it's one of our favorites. I'd probably put this in one of my top 5 plants we do. Really love this plant. Sherman's Nordlicht, the name means Northern Lights, the Nordlicht part. So you see it sometimes sold as Northern Light. Sherman's Nordlicht, though, is an awesome dwarf Dawn redwood. There's one of the biggest ones in the country out here in front of the Laugh House. It's I actually talk about Talon a lot, but Talon actually donated that one to the J.C. Raulson a while back. So yeah.
And it was funny because Henk Van Kempen actually introduced the tree. When we were going to take cuttings to graft and produce all of our trees, Henk was actually visiting, and he actually walked up at the same time we were cutting on the tree, and he said,
calling Tim saying, hold off on pruning, we want some soundwood.
And Henk had sent wood to Talon, and Talon had donated it here, one of the first ones, and then we were taking cuttings off of it and met Henk, and he told us the story of how Sherman was his customer and had this witch's broom happen in his Metasequoia white spot.
We were actually at a plant conference, and there was a question of what's a witch's broom and also variegated. So this is one of the few trees I could come up with that was a variegated plant that also had a witch's broom on it. We've introduced a few since then.
Of a tree, yeah.
Yeah, but there's very few things that are witch's broom and variegated.
So this is an Acer Palmetto Pastel. This one has a pink pastel color to it, and it's a very, very pastel throughout the season as well.
Just keeps putting on kind of like soft pinks, whites to yellows as it matures. And it's again one of those ghost type series type plants, again in that lineage of.
That photo's not coming through as well there, but it has that reticulated variegation with some red fall color on it. So this is one of my favorite climbing hydrangeas. Climbing hydrangeas, you always want to give them something to climb on, be it your wooden lattices or wooden fence or an old tree. But this is Cougar variegated, and this one for us has been able to handle a lot more sun than some of the other hydrangea anomalies that we've been growing, and just keeps having that yellow to white with variegations on those green. Really neat to give you some colors besides the blooms whenever they bloom.
It's a great way to add color to an area where you have an older oak tree or something. Especially, like, they can handle the sun, but in the shade it's really going to pop with variegation. And so you've got an area in your garden that's dark and you've got nothing really going on there. It's a great plant to add to an existing tree. We've been putting them on some older poplars and some older oak trees around our display garden there at my uncle's, and really enjoyed the results.
You typically want to give them more protection from the high afternoon sun, but this is one that for us has been able to handle more sun.
Especially as they mature.
Yeah, this one, a younger plant, has been able to handle a lot more sun than a lot of the other common hydrangeas. So this is one of my favorite Japanese maples. It's one of the fastest growing. It's called Germain's Gyration, a twisting, contorting Japanese maple. And you see how the branchings just twist and contort. This is actually a customer of ours down in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
So if I had $1 for every time somebody says, "How big does that get?" I'll be dead by the time that's there. I'm like, well, Japanese maples will outlive us all. But this is one that we call it the Mack truck of Japanese maples because it gets big really quickly. And so it's not uncommon in a 10-year period for this one to be 12 by 12 already.
This one is an introduction by Isley Nursery. And it's named after Germain Isley.
And so this one gives the appearance of a 100-year-old tree in a relatively short time frame. So you'll get those big, longwood-looking garden-size dissectums in a relatively short time frame.
And typically more on the orange side of the fall color. It's hard to see the size of this tree.
This is an old picture. Now this tree's triple that.
This photo was last year.
It's bigger than that now by far.
Yeah, it's grown probably 1.5 foot to 2 foot in each direction since last year. And
really brilliant oranges though. This really doesn't do it justice. It's a green, but then brilliant oranges to yellows in the fall. This exact tree is in a customer of ours garden, and that was in our garden, but this one's in a customer of ours garden, and it's a very old plant. It looks probably smaller than it is with that house right there beside it, but it's probably a good 15 to 20 feet wide by probably 10 to 12 feet tall already. And a nursery in Oregon offered him a ton of money to dig this up and put it on a refrigerated truck and drive it to their display garden, and he said he'd rather than drive it through the house. So he said, no, we're not moving it, but it was a nice pinning for one plant.
This one here, we planted as a 7-gallon, and 4 years later, it's every bit of 8 to 9 feet tall and probably 12 to 15 foot wide.
So it does grow quickly. It's one that you have to have space for a tree that gets that big that quick. But if you have some room for one to take off, it's quite fun to watch.
And I tell this joke frequently when I talk about this plant, but I had a 92-year-old lady come to the nursery, and she said, I want the tree that goes the quickest. And I showed her this tree, then showed her around the nursery.
What a lively lady, too.
Yeah, she was pretty lively. And she said, all right, I'm going to take that Germain's Gyration. And I reached down to pick up the tree. She pinched me on the butt. And then I turned around and looked at her, and she said, I still got it. What do you do with it? But anyways, it was hilarious. And so every time I think about Germain's Gyration, I think about that 92-year-old lady who pinched me on the butt. Oh, yeah, she is, actually.
She was at a talk of ours earlier this year, and Tim almost started into that story. I'm like, hey, Tim.
Still lively at 94. Yeah.
You got a discount.
So this is actually a tree I love. I'm growing to love it more. We offer this tree now, but we can only ship it within North Carolina. So this is a rare tree that you don't get to see very often because you have to find someone in North Carolina who can sell it, because this is actually an endangered tree. It's on the endangered species list.
So as a result, it's illegal to transport across state lines. These were completely obtained legally, though, and grafted onto Cainanthus virginicus understocks.
Retusas. Yeah.
So this is just as hardy as the Chinese root system that it's on.
And so all these are grafted to Cainanthus retusas, which is more resistant to the emerald ash borer. I don't know if the pygmaeus will be resistant as well. That's something I was asked about earlier. But I think, I'm hoping that will help give it some advantages. But pygmaeus is a smaller growing, almost very similar to the Cainanthus virginicus that people are familiar with. It's a dwarfer form of the Grancy graybeard. You often see this tree, people will say, hey, look at this Cainanthus pygmaeus. You can just search on Facebook and you'll find lots of people saying, look at this Cainanthus pygmaeus, and it's really just a Cainanthus virginicus.
They just have a young Cainanthus virginicus.
Yeah, it's a young or smaller Cainanthus virginicus. But the way you can tell is it has much smaller blooms, still clusters, and makes the same gorgeous display, but the actual blooms themselves are much smaller. So that's one easy way to identify Cainanthus pygmaeus. But this tree puts on an amazing display, and it's one of those trees that's a really beautiful tree. It's going to get about 6-8 foot. It's actually a stronger grower than the Cainanthus virginicus. I was talking to some people at the Bach Tower Institute, and it was Bach Tower Gardens. They say it never, ever falls over unless someone just runs over the lawnmower. And it's one of those plants that just always has a strong root system to it and develops a nice little tree, about 6-8 foot. Very beautiful foliage.
Also, no endangered species were harmed in the recreating of these.
Yes, these were grafted off of trees in arboretum setting. So these weren't taking cuttings off of trees in the wild. You don't have to worry about that. All these were produced very legally. We just apparently we can't ship them out of the state until we figure out a way to get a permit.
Really cool plant, though.
Yeah.
One we've really been excited about getting to offer for a while.
But it's great for the bees. It's a great endangered tree that's just going to give you a lot of white color in the spring with those blooms. And
a nicer, denser habit, too.
Oh, yeah.
Sunshade?
I would probably give it partial.
Okay.
So this is another one of our introductions. We say it's one of our introductions. Many of y'all may know Laddie Munger, who actually found this tree. Is he? I don't know if he's in. Haven't saw him tonight.
He did our grafting class when we did the grafting class, probably the first time, 2012.
Yeah.
And he'd been sending us pictures of those trees for years. He has this 20-year-old seedling in his backyard. This is actually a picture of one of the branches of the old bark on the tree. And so we just fell in love with this tree as a kind of an improved form of bihu because it's more durable for us. The spring color has this bright blushing of pink over the whole tree too. And so it kind of has more pinkish new growth in the early spring. Now it will fade to a green. The colors are going to be very similar to most of your coral bark types. But for the early spring, the whole tree for a while is bright pink.
And Laddie's tree, when we first went and started taking cuttings off, it was every bit of 8 to 9 foot. You know, it got a large base on it. And it was yellow all the way down to the base. And that just really gave us a lot of hopes with this tree. And this tree's really been a good grower and keeps showing all the same traits that we've been looking at. So we've been really loving this tree. But it also goes to an orange in the fall. Another tree gives you some great yellow bark. If you're looking for an alternate to bihu, Acer Rubicons Winter Gold was actually named by some of our friends at Yamina Rare Plant Nursery in Australia. But just has that bright electric red bark on a snake bark maple. Again, snake bark because it has those striations that look almost like a snake. But this one's going to have that bright yellow.
This does have green foliage in the spring. The picture you see over here is the fall color, as it's going into fall color with the golden foliage. Really intense. I love going and just standing in one of these and taking a picture in the fall because it just looks electric. I mean, the bark is neon yellow and the foliage is neon yellow, and so it's really intense. But it's a fun plant for every season. I mean, out of leaf, it really shows out.
So we did get to go to Japan. We were on a Japanese TV show. No, it wasn't a Japanese game show, but they did make us run towards the camera doing weird high steps and yell "Nippon ni ikitai."
If you ever watch Japanese TV, it's very campy. I was convinced that I was going to have like a high-pitched voice since I'm kind of a big guy anyway. Like I was like, this is going to be really goofy when I see myself on this, but it was really fun.
So when we're talking about color explosion, we had to show photos from Japan when we really saw an amazing color explosion of Japanese maples just really electrifying the landscape.
So we talked about some different cultivars. These will be more landscape type shots where you can kind of get ideas of the thematic kind of creations you can do with just Japanese maples as well.
And this is Nakata-san here. He's an amazing guy who really showed us a lot and took us around and introduced us to some of these neat places. And
we started out the TV show. One of the things we did is, and it didn't even make it onto the show. We probably talked to you a little bit about the show, but not about this part of it. Nakata-san took us into the woods where we kind of looked at how maples were growing natively, and then we went back and recreated that garden with some of his plants in his nursery. And so we kind of looked at how the native habitat was working with the river there and how it was going, and then we went and tried to recreate that same look. So this is Nakakomodo weeping. If we ever do a book, one of these pictures will probably be the cover of the book. This is the 600-year-old Japanese maple we were talking about. It's in the Fukushima prefecture where all the craziness happened with the tsunami.
It's often referred to as national treasure. So when we were in Japan, they were a little taken back because we'd already made one trip to Japan. This wasn't our fifth trip to Japan. I mean, the show was called Nippon ni Ikitai. Everyone wants to go to Japan, but we'd already been once before.
We were always up front that we'd been to Japan once before, but we didn't advertise it a ton on that. If they asked, we said yes, but we weren't like, hey, by the way, we know what we're doing a little bit.
So I had my phone connected with pocket Wi-Fi, and I was following where we were at, where we were going, what was near us, and we had a day of rain shooting. And I told Matt, I said, I think we're up north near their national treasure. I think we're near the oldest tree recorded in Japan.
And so we were looking at Nakata-san's brochure, and of course we're translating it with with the Google Translate and everything, and reading all the lines on the brochure. And it said we're within this far of Nakakomodo weeping, and I thought, could that be the national treasure tree? And so we started bugging Nakata-san a little bit, and he was kind enough to drive us on our day off while they were shooting B-roll.
An hour and a half.
Yeah, an hour and a half north from where we were at his nursery.
An hour and a half back to see this tree. And it's actually at a temple. We probably didn't, I didn't put a photo here of the temple of it beside the temple.
The stakes on this, and we'll be putting together, I need to do a really good YouTube video of this at some point because we have probably more footage than you could ever imagine of us walking around talking about the street. But Ace was our translator who was hanging out with us on our days off, and so we had to basically read every single thing. The stakes around this tree actually were dated around 200 years old themselves, so kind of the stakes holding that up. But really cool tree to see, and it was just in great fall color.
Yeah, we hit it just the right time.
And there's another shot from the front on.
And there's actually a sister seedling, or it may be a rooted cutting from this one. Maybe a seedling.
It's actually a little bit different fall color. I think it came from that one, according to some of the things.
They try to keep propagating because they're afraid at some point this one here may pass away. They know at some point it's going to age out, and so they've got another one right here beside of it to continue on its legacy. And then all around the area, there's little seedlings or cuttings in people's yards or right around the temple. As you can see, those are future ones that may be in that place.
This tree's around 600 years old, and its legacy would be Raulson and then the selections from Raulson. So if you start out here and then eventually you get to things like Dragon Master that are yellow versions, essentially of this tree.
And this one tree has that palmate leaf with that twisting, weeping habit.
It's just in awe though. You stand there something that's 600 years old and you think this is crazy. You're starting to like do the math and you're like, America's how old? And you're like, how old's this? And how long is this? But then you're like, this is just nuts. Your mind just starts to go through all the things, and really cool experience. So go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
We had to show you one little clip of this too while we're going through our Japan photos. Our friend, she kind of blew up, got super popular. You probably saw it on.
This lady right here.
What's the YouTube page? Real Big Story.
Yeah, Great Big Story or Real Big Story or.
Yeah, maybe Great Big Story.
Yeah.
But she was preparing the maple tempura, and so super popular.
Right there.
We're thinking about trying this if we do a fall open house one year, preparing some maple tempura. We actually shot a huge segment where they wanted Tim to look really dumb, and so like me and him. So they wanted us to do it wrong so they could show us doing it right on the TV show. And so that part didn't make it into the TV show either. But like,
did it? It did.
Like me and Tim were like going out in our garden like now, and we were pulling leaves off like big japonicums that are this big, and like taking them in.
And they asked me, of all people, to cook them
Yeah, he
and
was
try to
a
make
good-
maple tempura. I don't cook.
He blows up hot dogs in the microwave. This bachelor doesn't cook at all, so like
I make sandwiches.
basically what they had.
I can
Tim
make
do-
macaroni and cheese.
Not well. So basically, what they had Tim do was take huge Acer japonicum leaves and like put them in a pancake and just fry them until they were terrible. And then I had to eat them on camera and be like, this sucks. I mean, this is awful. And then, so then we went and learned how to do it properly. But we wanted to include this because it was really cool. Again, we're probably going to do a YouTube video about this at some point, but gosh, I forget her name off the top of my head, but this lady's blown up now. She's been in...
And her son's in Florida.
Yeah.
Did she pet you?
No, she
No,
not.
no.
This lady did not fit me on the butt.
Super cool though, and she talked to us about the type cultivars she uses to prepare the foliage. It's a very specific leaf, like they only use yellow foliage, and we looked at some cultivars that would be very similar to what she used, so we could start trying it out a little bit.
Next time I go back, I'm gonna see if we can't go visit her and collect seeds off of hers to bring over and be able to do some tempura over here.
Super nice lady. Her, I'm sure you saw it on Facebook. Her YouTube story has went like viral a million times over.
So we also, everywhere we went with the TV show was in peak fall color. And they would call ahead and they'd say, what's the fall color like? And we'd go there.
You never get a better trip than when you go to the TV show because they scout ahead. And they're like, yeah, it's not good. We're not going there. So like they would keep us in suspense about where we were going. So when we showed up, we were like, wow, blown away with it. But this is at the Kyoto Botanical Garden. But again, just some of that contrast you can have with fall color and color explosion going on. This is
I actually didn't put my photos in.
at Ginkgo Alley, and this is
Icho Namaki Avenue. It's in Tokyo and it's amazing. The ambiance is just everything's yellow because they have streets lined, perfectly manicured ginkgos, all shaped the same way, bright neon yellow fall
40
color.
feet
and
tall. All of them are like perfect little pyramids.
They block off the streets for periods of time, and they say, everyone go take photos. And then everyone takes photos,
Oh, it's
and
great.
then they say, get out of the way! And they blow a whistle, and then the cars start going back to the middle again.
We braved the bus system and figured out how to get down there on our day off again to do
The train.
this. The train system, yeah, the train system, which is much trickier than the bus system. But
I would rather drive. It's much easier to
Way
drive
easier
in
to-
Japan than take the trains.
So we figured all that out. We got here, and then like the traffic is like, it was like 5 o'clock Raleigh traffic when we got there, and so we're like, what gives? Like, we're never going to be able to get a picture of this. Like, it was 5-lane traffic, just downtown Tokyo, and then a whistle blows. Literally, people drag out a bunch of barricades. 15,000 people get out on the road for 30 minutes. And then a whistle blows and they move and all the traffic goes again.
And they literally bring their dogs out there, set them on stools, and take photos of them with the ginkgos in fall color.
It's like the biggest holiday you've ever seen. It's like they were shooting music videos. It was the biggest
Kids
holiday.
were out there literally doing the party rock
Yeah,
dance.
like people were shooting. It's like such a big party in the streets. It's crazy. And it was just so much fun to see that.
On the other side of things, that was the ginkgo party. The maple party we saw was at Karanke. And they take all their ginkgos and hit them with yellow lights. So these are in perfect fall, maples in perfect fall color. Everyone's going taking fall colors. And then it gets dark, and then they light up the forest.
You couldn't talk
with yellow.
about color explosion without including this part of it. It was really hard to photograph. Again, I might have talked about this to you before if you've ever seen some of our talks, but this is how much of it made it into the TV show. Like, this was there, and I'm like, wow. And so we went like 7 hours to get to this place to shoot this, but that was all that made it into the TV show. And there's probably, 20,000 Japanese maples along this embankment. And you come across this red bridge, there's probably 20,000 trees, and every single tree has yellow underlighting.
And then
while
during the
there's
middle of this-
reds, yellows, and orange fall colors, and so the whole forest is like on fire.
It's amazing.
That's
They
so
light-
cool.
they
Our
light up
dream is
the-
to one day maybe recreate a little something like that in one of our new display gardens we're working on.
And they light up the walkways with little candles that have little maple leaves cut out of the candles, or out of the candle holder, so it just looks like little maple leaves everywhere you walk.
One day when you come to Hendersonville for the apples during fall, maybe we'll have something for you to come through that will maybe not mirror that, but have something like that.
So I guess we're to questions.
Where in Japan was the Maple Festival?
It was in
Karanke.
Karanke is the name of the city.
It's southern between Osaka and Tokyo.
Coolest thing. It
Closer
never
towards
made it
the
onto the show, but it was. I'm glad they took us there and wasted all that time shooting, I guess. We shot hours of video just walking around looking, into this color because that just kept going. I mean, it didn't end. Like, you just kept walking through glowing forest of Japanese maples for a long time. Any questions about maples, or?
I know we went through a bunch of
Anything
cultivars,
we
and then we
mentioned?
talked about Japan, so.
Yeah.
Excuse me, how do they do with ground covers? We've got one area that has Vinca minor growing into it, and I'm afraid about the root structure competing with it.
You have to be careful with anything that has, Japanese maples have a very non-invasive root system. One of the reasons we're able to put, in like those pictures you saw, you can have a ton of Japanese maples in a small area because they don't compete heavily for roots. But as a result, you want to make sure you don't put things around them that have massive root systems.
So at a younger age, Vinca might be a little more aggressive. Something like a sedum may be a little softer for it. But as the tree ages, like our display garden, you were there at the open house, you'll notice we have got actually different varieties of Vinca around some of the larger trees. But we didn't put that out until the trees had already had a nice sized caliper to it. And it wasn't going to be affected as much by a smaller Vinca plant.
Those aren't terribly, like invasive for the roots. You got to be careful with some things like Japanese yews and things like that. You'll see people build a container garden and they'll have a really nice pot. They'll put a yew in there, and the yew will take up 75% of the root space, and they'll only be, very small, but the root space is huge for it.
Or some tall grasses.
Tall ornamental grasses you may need to be careful adding, especially to confined spaces, things like that, because maples are not very invasive at all in the roots. And they're very well rooted in, but it's not something you want to give a massive amount of competition to.
Yeah, they definitely don't want a lot of competition, especially at a younger age. As they age, they're more resistant to plants trying to compete with them. But at a younger age, you definitely want to put a bunch of ditch lilies or something right at the base of it that might root out some of the younger plants.
Yes?
Spraying protocol for fungus.
Spraying protocol for fungus. Honestly, we really don't have too much of a fungus issue.
Light insecticidal soaps work great. Early spring works better than late. Most times, especially this time of the year, like small damages like powdery mildew and things like that have already ran their course, and so you want to catch them early. Things like basic insecticidal soaps can help kind of limit that powdery mildew buildup too.
The most light fungicides that are rated for maples should be fine. To be honest with you though, fungicides and strong insecticides and things like that of nature are things that we actually have a lot of less experience in because we don't have that many issues where we're at. And when we don't see there's a big issue, we don't treat it for fear of we've got a very large creek behind our house we don't want to affect any of the ecosystem. And so we're very, very minimalist when it comes to putting out a lot of stuff. But I believe there's a number of, just look on the label and see if it's labeled for ornamentals or maples. And most fungicides will knock out something like the powdery mildew. But are you talking about another type of fungicide, a fungus, other than powdery mildew? The leaf spot. Now the leaf spot's a different thing. Most of the leaf spot is actually taken out by insecticide. Because what you're seeing, the leaf spots are the results of leaf hoppers that are
small aphids
that are running around and hopping, laying their eggs on the leaves on a lot of Japanese maples, and then those eggs hatch out. The leaf hoppers are also carry the fungus with them. So if you go and if you treat for the leaf hoppers, you don't have the issue with the leaf spot because it's the leaf hoppers that are actually doing that. And a lot of people will think that's a number of different things. I've heard from most people think I watered this and it's in the sun, this burnt.
Mark actually had a really good study he sent me on it last year where we've had more of it here in the south than in years past, but it kind of just looks like little bullet holes. And it's not something that's going to cause long-term damage in the tree, but it kind of just makes a little circle. And for the longest time, we were puzzled by it. I sent a picture of it to Mark, and that's probably like 4 years ago we first noticed it. And it's conditional, so it's not something that's going to affect the tree long-term, but it certainly can make it look a little less desirable, for that season.
But if the best way to deal with that is mid-spring, before you start seeing any damage, treat for the leafhoppers. And if you treat for the leafhoppers, which is just the little teeny tiny, sometimes look like small little leaves, little grasshoppers, you'll see them, you'll touch them, they'll jump around. They're actually carrying around a lot of the fungus that's spreading around.
But it is mostly conditional too. You'll notice some years The truth of it is, by the time you notice, it's normally too late. Yes?
I know a lot of the maples you can keep in pots, even root pruning to keep
Yeah.
it put. What about the larger cultivars of ginkgo? It'd be nice to have some of that pretty foliage up close. with
Well,
the
they will
larger
kind of do like
cultivar.
goldfish too, in that they will stay smaller in containers. I mean, certainly I've seen autumn gold, which is typically gigantic, done into a bonsai style and kept very small for a very, very long time. And so they will stay smaller by being kept, confined like that. You'd have to root prune it and lightly reduce roots. Typically, we do most of that in like late February to early March kind of time frame.
But ginkgos respond very well to container culture, especially if you can do some root pruning during the winter.
Now, there's certainly several cultivars you can pick too, same root system, so it's same philosophy, but you can pick certain cultivars that'll stay very small, and so it kind of lends itself easier to it, so you're not trying to play catch up as much.
But whenever you root prune, still remember that those pots need to be a little more alkaline. So by giving them lime, that'll allow them to fill out and make a nice dense tree and have strong growth to them, but you can still keep them smaller by doing those methods.
You probably heard this joke, I've probably told this one before, but this guy called me and he said, I've squeezed the lime all over the ginkgo, so I buried them right in there as well. So sorry if that was you, but if you say something that funny, I'm going to mention it in all my talks for forever, because I laughed for 5 minutes on the phone before I realized he wasn't joking. Yes?
For the Piedmont area, what's your favorite recommendation for a dwarf yellow or witch's broom yellow around here?
I would probably say the summer gold. It's the smaller of the yellows. There's certainly a lot that can handle it,
And that's for one that's going to be able to handle more sun.
summer gold's typically only 6-7 feet even in 20 years, so it stays relatively small. But it would be my pick for the brightest yellow, but also the smallest.
And that's for being able to handle the sun. The Dragon Master and Golden Falls, probably need to give them a little protection from night afternoon sun, but they're going to give you amazing weeping habit.
Yeah, and those lights will be
Yellow
smaller
color.
long term.
Yeah.
Unless you stake them up really tall.
Have you guys ever had any ambrosia beetle problems?
We haven't.
We've been very fortunate. We don't have them up there, but those are scary for sure. We always kind of sweat it a little bit when we see pictures and outbreaks and things like that.
I heard someone in the Wake Forest area had problems with their food. I didn't know that they were around the area.
Nothing that we've had in our area. So we just
Yeah,
hope that
do
we
less
hope for
experience
another
with
cold
it.
winter that keeps knocking them back.
That's the kind of thing that does make me smile when it's a little colder. Some years I'm hating it, but I'm like, maybe no fire
keep those
ants.
nasty-
I had a ginkgo that I had in the ground for like 8 years when it did absolutely nothing. So I did put it in a container and I went to a talk you guys did last year and I added the lime.
Yeah.
This year it's gone it has new growth that it had never had.
It's a trick we learned from friends in Japan. They were throwing it on there, and
You'll read online, people will say ginkgos are slow growing, other people say they're fast growing. Well, the difference is the alkalinity of the soil.
It makes such a difference, but my question is, do I need to add that every year? And then how often do you need to root prune if I do want to kind of keep it in a container?
sure, you can. The answer to how frequently we do it is varied. And so, like on a 1 gallon, we'll hit them in the spring, like March. We'll go back, we'll do more lime in the midsummer, typically around now, and then we'll also lime them when we pot things up in the fall. So a lot of things will be going from 1 to 3 gallons. We'll lime them again in the fall. Some of the trees have been limed 3 times for us in one season. Not something you have to do, but it's also not something you have to be that worried about. It's not going to really, it's hard to overdo it is the answer. I'll put something like 3 tablespoons in a 3 gallon. And so we'll use a high level amount, and the growth is great. Not something you have to do every season, but you certainly will get results with it. And if you're cutting back that foliage too, you'll notice caliper will thicken up immensely that way too. And so
Especially,
we'll create a,
you'll get a large caliper by lining going into the fall.
Shoots coming out, I should cut the.
you don't have to, but if you're going for like that aesthetic in a container where you're trying to keep it smaller, by doing that you will thicken the base up a lot too.
So in ground, do you keep doing it every year kind of thing?
You don't have to, but you certainly can. Like
I typically do it for the first 2 or 3 years, and that just lets the tree get its motor started. And once it gets its motor started and the alkalinity of the soil is kind of getting a little more alkaline, it keeps going.
Okay.
The first year we tried it, we
if you
We
saw
lined the nursery out and we said, this side's getting lined this heavy, and we're just going pretty heavy with it, and this isn't. And then the changes within, a short time frame were like, wow. We should be doing this to everything. It's
But if you
not
start to see
variegating
it-
anything, and it's making them really jump.
if you start to see your ginkgo slow down, you want to keep growing, I'd probably throw some more lime at it because it's probably going to be one of the things that gets it going.
And it's cheap. I mean, it's something you can get $3 or $4 a bag. Or if you want to make it a margarita, just. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
The leaf color for Ohi Sumagaki, on the website, it didn't have the leaf color.
It will
Spring.
fade to more green this time of season. What it does, Ogi Sumagaki will have that purple border to it. So if you're familiar with Sumagaki, that kind of that red fingernail look, so it's a green leaf, almost yellow early spring chartreuse with purple border around each leaf. And Ogi Sumagaki is a selection by our friend,
Hishio Nakajima.
Hissio Nakajima introduced that one. And what it's supposed to do is hold the border even more longer into the season, so it's a more elaborate border to it later. Now,
And
this
you'll
time of year
notice-
typically is mostly green, but the new growth will have that bright border.
You'll also notice that Sumagaki needs protection from the hot afternoon sun, almost even in the spring. The Ogi Sumagaki will hold it throughout the season.
And it can handle a little bit more
it'll handle
sun,
the
too.
sun throughout the season. And part of that is, it does grow to a darker green throughout the summer, where the Sumagaki tries to be a little more yellow green. It can burn.
Well, that looks like it for
Any
the
other
questions. How about if we have the questions over there near the plant sale after we do our little plant giveaway?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Matt and Tim.